Imagine waking up to a scene so unsettling that it instantly raises every hair on the back of your neck, a scene that feels like something out of a nightmare. One cold November morning in 2022, in the quiet town of Roma, Georgia, the local police received a call about a car abandoned in the middle of a small waterway. When they arrived, what they found was bizarre, almost impossible to explain: a Toyota Prius, resting quietly in the shallow current, its engine off, the headlights still faintly glowing as if frozen in time, and absolutely no one inside. There were no signs of a struggle, no skid marks, no footprints, nothing that could hint at how the car ended up there. The car seemed to have simply stopped, as if left by an invisible hand. When the authorities ran the license plate, they quickly discovered that the car belonged to Aaron Davis, a 21-year-old recent college graduate known in the town for his bright personality and promising future. His parents, when contacted, were stunned beyond words. They had no idea how or why Aaron's car had ended up in that isolated, muddy waterway. The father's voice trembled on the phone, a mix of confusion, fear, and disbelief, as he tried to explain to the officers that Aaron had left the house the night before, just to meet a friend. But now, his son was missing, and the only trace of him was this abandoned vehicle, half submerged and eerily silent. The police immediately recognized that this was no ordinary disappearance. Something about the scene was deeply unsettling. The car's interior was intact, untouched, and yet, its emptiness was deafening. It was almost as if Aaron had vanished into thin air, leaving behind only the shell of his life, suspended in the cold, early morning mist. Every detail, or rather the absence of details, raised more questions than answers. Where had he gone? Was he in danger? Had something sinister occurred while he was driving, or after he arrived at his destination? The town, normally quiet and unremarkable, suddenly felt heavy with fear and anticipation, as the first whispers of a mystery began to circulate. The scene marked the start of a terrifying and puzzling investigation, one that would eventually uncover layers of secrets, betrayals, and a darkness no one in Rome could have imagined. And at the center of it all was the question that haunted everyone that morning: where was Aaron Davis, and who or what was responsible for this unimaginable disappearance? Little did anyone know, the answer would lead them to the last person who had seen him alive, a friend whose presence that night would become the key to unraveling the chilling truth behind the empty car. The last person who saw Aaron might hold the key to a mystery no one in town could have ever imagined. Asterisk. After discovering Aaron's abandoned car, the police immediately focused on the last person known to have seen him alive, his longtime friend, Brandon Reisner. Brandon and Aaron had been close since middle school, inseparable through high school and even during their college years. According to Brandon, they had spent the previous night celebrating Aaron's graduation, drinking and reminiscing about old times. At first, everything seemed normal: a night of laughter, memories, and a little too much alcohol. But as the hours passed, an uneasy tension began to creep in. Brandon told the authorities that around midnight, Aaron suddenly felt intense stomach pain from drinking too much and had to leave to recover, stepping away to the bathroom. Brandon, concerned but trusting his friend, gave him space and returned to his own activities, believing Aaron would be fine. By the early hours of the morning, Aaron had vanished. Brandon claimed he had no idea where his friend had gone, and that Aaron's phone was off or unanswered. The police found his story plausible enough, yet something about it didn't sit right. After all, the car had been found miles away from where Brandon said Aaron had been last, and there were no witnesses to explain how he could have ended up in a shallow waterway. Questions began swirling in the investigators' minds. Did Aaron leave willingly? Was someone else involved? Or had a tragic accident occurred that no one had seen? The authorities knew that Brandon held the most critical piece of the puzzle. He was the last link in the chain between Aaron's ordinary life and the shocking mystery that now gripped the town. Every word he spoke, every detail of that night, would be scrutinized for inconsistencies. His memories of laughter and friendship were now shadowed by fear and suspicion, and the police couldn't ignore the possibility that something far more sinister had taken place under the veil of a quiet, cold night. As the sun rose over Rome, Georgia, the investigation took on a new urgency. The abandoned car was only the beginning. The true story of Aaron's disappearance was about to unfold, and the last person to see him alive would soon find himself at the center of a dark, twisting web of secrets, lies, and unimaginable truths. What the police found in Aaron's room would shock even the most seasoned investigators, and it was only the beginning. Asterisk. After focusing on Brandon as the last person to see Aaron, the police decided to investigate his home in person. What they discovered inside would immediately raise alarms. As they entered the house, a strange tension filled the air: locked doors, closed windows, and an unsettling silence that contrasted sharply with the normalcy Brandon had described. They asked Brandon to guide them to the room Aaron had stayed in, and as soon as the door opened, the officers were hit by a strong, chemical-like smell, almost suffocating in its intensity. Cleaning supplies were scattered across the room in excessive amounts, far beyond what any ordinary household would require. But that was not the most disturbing part. Their eyes were drawn to the bloodstains: dark, sticky patches smeared across the carpet, pooling near the bed, and streaked along the floor. It was evident that this blood had been there for some time. The police exchanged uneasy glances. Something didn't add up. Brandon quickly tried to explain, saying that Aaron had suffered severe alcohol poisoning and had vomited blood, but the officers could sense the inconsistencies in his story. Every detail seemed off: the excessive cleaning supplies, the strange positioning of objects, the ominous silence, and the absence of Aaron's belongings. It felt as though the room itself was hiding secrets, whispering that something far more sinister had occurred. The scene made it clear that whoever had been in that room had gone to great lengths to cover up what had happened. At that moment, the police began to feel a creeping sense of dread. The abandoned car, the vanishing Aaron, and now this room filled with blood and strange chemicals, all the pieces were starting to point to a horrifying possibility. And yet, the full truth was still just beyond reach. They knew that to uncover it, they would need to look deeper, to question every word, every action, and every alibi. What happened that night in that room was the turning point, the moment when the mystery of Aaron's disappearance shifted from a puzzling case to a chilling criminal investigation. In the next part, Brandon makes a shocking move that leaves the police chasing shadows, and the secrets of that night start to unravel in ways no one expected. When the police began to suspect him, Brandon did something no one could have predicted. As the investigation into Aaron's disappearance intensified, Brandon's behavior grew increasingly suspicious. The police were already on edge, piecing together the strange details: the abandoned car, the blood-stained room, and the overwhelming smell of cleaning chemicals. And then, in a move that shocked the entire neighborhood, Brandon suddenly fled. He climbed over a tall fence and disappeared into the quiet streets of Rome, Georgia, vanishing without a trace. The authorities immediately launched a full-scale search, combing the area house by house, asking neighbors